you trust your first impressions of people? Should you? The old wisdom says you shouldn't jump to conclusions, but scientists are making some remarkable discoveries that might change your mind. Would you like to have more faith in your gut feelings about other people? And would you like to have more control in how you yourself are judged? ABC Science editor Michael Gillen is about to tell you how.
We all do it without thinking. In just seconds, we size people up, and others do the same to us. But where do these first impressions come from, and are they reliable? We've always been told that they're not, but new scientific studies are discovering just the opposite is true. According to them, first impressions are surprisingly accurate and important.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Take, for example, Michael Martin. His old employer is relocating, but Michael wants to stay right here in San Francisco and find a new job. In preparation for his upcoming job search, Michael has hired management consultant Marie Fimwright. It's her job to diagnose the first impression Michael makes on people, especially prospective employers.
I kind of feel like it's begging, you know, please hire me, you know.
What impression does Michael make on you? Does he come across as reliable? Someone you'd want to hire? And how much of your quick impression is influenced by his scruffy appearance?
You also have a very intense look about you. Has anybody ever told you that before?
I've heard that, yeah. Intense or intimidating because of my size and my looks.
We'll check on his progress later on, but already Michael is beginning to realize just how much he needs Marie's help.
I understand you always can't judge a book by its cover, but most people do.
Right.
Next, meet Stacy. Unlike Michael, her outward appearance isn't the main issue. It's her personality. Something about how she comes across on a first date makes men rarely call her back a second time.
Nick?
To her, it's puzzling.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Just say, you know, could I have said something differently, or did I say something that made them not like me? You know, like, I like me, so, and my friends like me, why didn't he like me?
Psychologist Ann Demarace is helping Stacy find out. Ann's company, which happens to be called First Impressions, sets up clients like Stacy with a trained evaluator to assess how she comes across on that all-important first date.
There's almost always a gap between what you think you're projecting and how you're actually perceived. Even for very highly skilled people, we are not always aware what we're communicating.
Here's what Stacy thinks she communicates.
Yeah, I think people think that I'm a funny, warm, caring person. I tend to break through very quickly with people.
What do you think? Does she come across as warm and caring?
Because I do like the water. I grew up at the beach, and I spent my summers at summer camp on a lake. I got to meet a lot of different people. It's really very interesting. It's very different from what I used to do. Something that I do that makes me feel good. It makes me feel good about myself. And as I said, it's
evidently not. Instead, Stacy comes across as caring mostly about herself. And that's why, based on first impressions alone, men shy away from giving her a second chance. Later on, we'll check on Stacy's progress. But for now, both she and Michael illustrate just how distressing bad first impressions can be. They can scare away people and opportunities, says David Funder. He's a psychologist at the University of California, Riverside.
Any area of research, I'm sure.
What has more of a grip on us? A bad first impression or a good first impression? What's harder to overcome?
Probably a bad first impression. Unpleasant tastes are things we remember for a long time. Unpleasant experiences stick in our mind for a long time. Unpleasant people, not only do we remember them for a long time, but if we can, we avoid them.
Bottom line, says Funder, we humans place so much stock in our first impressions because they are essential to our survival. For example, if we see a suspicious-looking stranger coming at us, our brain has only a few seconds to decide whether or not we ought to cross the street and run for it.
What the brain is best at, and what it's evolved to do, is to take in thousands of different cues at once from the environment in a millisecond and come to some kind of decision as to what to do next. The people in previous generations who couldn't do that aren't our ancestors. You know, they didn't survive. Right.
But just how reliable are these snap judgments our brains are always making? Do they cause us to jump to unfair conclusions about people and situations? Or are they like a trustworthy sixth sense? To find out, we went to the University of Connecticut at Storrs and dropped in on Professor David Kenny's social psychology class.
The study is on first impressions. And so
It's the
you'll be
first day of
asked to
school, and the
state
students
how
have
you
never
see
met.
someone.
Professor Kenny tells them to rate 6 students merely by looking at them. They're not allowed to talk. There's Mark, Nicoletta, Kyle, Kim, Luke, and Melissa. Remember, these students know nothing about one another. They've just met for the first time. Yet Professor Kenny's students have to decide, based on a quick glance, whether our 6 subjects are hardworking or lazy, warm or cold, serious or frivolous. When they're finished, their snap judgments are tabulated and given to us. Their consensus? Well, for our first subject, Melissa, the news is both good and bad.
Some of you seem to rate Melissa as being really organized and really very sophisticated.
Her body mechanics, her body movement, body language just seem to be semi-professional and organized.
Quite a number of you found her to be cold and critical. Hey, what's that all about? You're laughing. Okay, Matt, you're laughing. Why?
She just seemed more reserved, more to herself.
It was a lack of facial expression. I didn't see her smile at all.
There was also a consensus about our other 5 subjects. Kyle came across as gregarious, Nicoletta as serious, Luke as a bit lazy and laid back, Mark as Mr. Average, Kim as Miss Congeniality. So, how accurate were those first impressions? To find out, we asked the people who've known each subject the longest, their family and friends. For instance, were they right about Kyle? Is he super sociable? Yes.
He's always been a very friendly sort of fella.
What about Nicoletta? Is she very deep and very serious? Yes.
She concentrates on everything, and she worries no matter what she concentrates on.
And what about Melissa? She's the one that came across to Professor Kenny's students as sophisticated and organized, but also cool and critical. Were their snap judgments about her correct? Yes.
Almost 100% accurate. I find it amazing, actually.
Here's something even more amazing. Of our 6 subjects, 4 were hits. Only 2 were misses. In other words, 4 out of 6 times our first impressions were judged as right on target by family and friends. And that's typical. Turns out new scientific studies show that our first impressions are accurate about 67% of the time. 67%. So why did our mothers always tell us that you can't judge a book by its cover?
If Mom was trying to say you can tell nothing about a book from its cover, she's wrong. You can discover whether it's an encyclopedia or whether it's fiction or whether it's a pot-boiler novel or, pornography or, you can tell a lot about a book from its cover.
But what about us? What is it about our outside cover that gives away so much so quickly about what kind of person we really are? Well, scientists say it begins with our face, our eyes, our facial expression, the way we're groomed. In a split second, they all broadcast whether or not we're friendly and approachable. And 67% of the time, those signals they broadcast are accurate. Unfortunately, though, 33% of the time, those signals are misinterpreted. For example, look at these composite sketches by New York City police artist Stephen Mancusi. This guy looks pretty pleasant, right? But merely thicken the eyebrows and all of a sudden, he looks more sinister. Or add some glasses and bingo, he suddenly looks intellectual.
Faces could certainly mislead us. We could have witnesses tell me that the guy looked very, very nice. He seemed like a very nice person, the kind of person that stays with his kids on the weekends, and here he is robbing the person.
The best way to keep your first impression of a stranger from going awry, says Dr. Funder, is to look down a bit.
If there's a place to look for cues that somebody's lying to you, it's in the body. It's from the neck down rather than from the neck up. But if you're going to look for signs that somebody's trying to deceive you, that's where you're better off looking than in the face.
After our face, in fact, our body language in general is what gives away the most about us. The real-life scene you're watching is one of 30 compiled by 2 California sociologists.
The bad point is my backhand.
One of these men has just beaten the other in a game of racquetball. Quick, who do you think it is? Odds are your first impression is based in large part on body language. If so, then your brain has noticed that the man on the left is nervous and fidgety. The man on the right appears more relaxed and more confident. If that was your snap judgment, you were absolutely correct. The man on the right was the winner. After body language comes the way we dress. Remember Nicoletta? Our college students formed their first impressions of her mainly based on the way she wore her hair, her dramatic nail polish, and her dark clothes.
Her appearance. A lot of people that I see that look like herself are very artsy.
And they were right on target judging her. Nicoletta is a drama student. Unfortunately, there are lots of traits that are beyond our control, yet they affect the impression we make on others. That's the bad news. The good news is there are plenty of other things we can change, even though it takes practice, 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 until the changes become second nature.
I try and go to the gym a lot. I find that
For example, remember Stacy? She's the one who came across as self-centered. Turns out nervousness was her problem. Talking about herself was a way of avoiding gaps in the conversation. With practice, she hopes to change.
Well, it's something that I think maybe I might want to incorporate into my communication style, is learning to become comfortable with those silences. So it becomes second nature, so you don't have to think about it.
What we'll do is we're going to go down and watch the tape now.
And what about our job seeker, Michael Martin? Well, he too is working hard to change. And not only in the way he expresses himself during conversations. Wow, what a transformation. No more Grizzly Adams, and hopefully, no more worrying about being unemployed.
Listen, I don't get those, the second looks like, wow, geez, kind of looks anymore. I think I'm a lot more positive first impression. Look, I think the future is bright.
He looks real good. Not surprisingly, more and more businesses are hiring consultants to help their employees improve that first impression they make on potential customers. After all, there may be only one meeting and one chance to make a deal.